I gave her an advice that why don't you switch your company and you should be willing to take a pay cut just to get into this field.
Okay, and did she do it?
But there is one part that is slightly different and it requires a little bit of luck.
As a manager at my own company, I would have 100% opened that mail. Hey folks, welcome back to Perspectify. In today's episode, we'll be breaking down some of the most practical tips for people coming from a non-tech background to get into a product management role at their dream company. And we're your hosts, Dhruv and Rakshit. Rakshit here, in fact, has been a product manager for the last nearly 3-4 years, right? So begs the question, Rakshit, how did you land that PM job? And how has your sort of journey been? Because you've been someone who's been from a content and a customer experience background, for that matter.
So I'll be honest, right? It's extremely difficult if you're not from, say, an engineering background, especially, or let's say from an IIT or an IIM, to get into a large-scale product company from day one. But with the 5-part framework that we have built for you, I think it can really help you not only get your first product management internship or job, but also help you succeed in it. So getting straight into the framework, which is the first idea or the first part of this framework, is to not work at a large scale company and to essentially go and work at a company which has maybe 20-30 people at max.
I would even say 5-10 in our cases, I think.
Yeah. So just a quick background, both Dhruv and I, when we started interning in college, we worked at companies which had like 5 people and or maybe even less, right? And we just got to learn so many things. And the point over here is you can essentially be a generalist at a small scale startup, and the benefit of doing that is basically 2 things. The first is that product management is a generalist role and you need to know everything or something of everything, right from customer experience to tech, right? And working at a small scale startup will really help you build your knowledge across all domains. The second advantage of working at a smaller scale startup is the fact that this is where you'll essentially figure out whether you should be a product manager or not. And we would really suggest that you watch the episode where we talk about what the fuck does a product manager do in 2024. It'll really help you figure out whether you should be a product manager or not in the first place.
And I think that's so on point, because even in my own case, right, weirdly enough, I was very intrigued by product since you got into a product role later on, right? And in my experience working in the initial days as an intern, as also a full-timer in a very, very small scale startup, right, with just 7 members, I was able to do research, I was able to do design, some content, social media. And I think just that holistic base of things that were covered just gave me confidence that, I actually enjoy doing these 2-3 things, and I continue to build my skill sets in that. So I think point is very straightforward, that it's not that you shouldn't work at a large scale company. In fact, a lot of people come from big companies and get into smaller companies as well. Point is that if you obviously belong to a non-tech background or a non-PM background, you definitely need to get into an area where you have some exposure to it, some basic exposure to how product functions, and probably some generalist work, so that you know what you exactly like to do. And that's when you could probably pivot into the PM role. But make sure you check out that episode that we have already covered on product management.
Coming to the second point of this framework, and that is to figure out what is the unique thing that you as an individual can bring to that company, right? And I think as non-tech or commerce students, when I first started looking out for companies to join as a product manager, what I figured out was that I'm really interested in finance and I'm really interested in fintech, because I felt that is where the next revolution was happening, right? And because I already had a finance background, I was able to provide that extra 1%, 2% value, which most PMs or most technical people were not able to provide. right? So you got to figure out that what is that edge that you can bring. So for example, if you already work in finance, right, or let's say in customer experience in finance, it is extremely difficult for you to get into a product role in a health tech company, because what's the relation, right? But it's more easier for you to get into a fintech company as a product manager because you already know the pain points.
And in fact, just about talking about this case, right? I actually have a friend who comes from a background where he was in equity research and strategy, and now he's actually in a PM role, right? And we actually have a clip from him which we're gonna throw up right in this segment. So check it out.
Now, see, to do this job well, a PM's job well, one needs to understand their users and their user behavior really well. Now, what would give you this understanding? That's industry experience. Now, if one doesn't have a prior, say, experience in tech or prior PM experience, then having expertise in that particular industry will give you an edge over someone who has to start off, understanding what the business is all about. Now, from my transition, say, into having zero tech experience, what I actually feel more important is that you'd have to be in the right place at the right time. But again, keeping all the other things aside, you will obviously need to have some industry experience, industry understanding to show that what you just need at this point of time is just some polishing in the way, uh, to understand how PMs actually work. The rest of the part is sorted. You'll just need some experience and some guidance. That's it.
That was really interesting. And as I've always said, anyone from any place can come and do a product role. And that's where we come to the third point, which is understanding data, tech, and design can help you. But most important is probably communication. So I'll be honest, right? The first 1 or 2 years of your product management experience or your product management journey would be majorly about getting shit done, right? That's your job. And knowing a little bit of data, tech, and design would essentially help you get things done faster. But you can learn that on the job as long as you're learning things very quickly, right? And what I think is that a lot of people delay the decision of getting into product is when they're thinking, yeah, I'll learn about all of these things and then only I'll apply, right? I think that can be a fatal mistake.
Okay.
But I think it's very important as a product manager for you to communicate your ideas and communicate what you're trying to say, right? And that's more important than, say, knowing data, tech, design.
So
Because
what do you mean by communication? Let's just break it down. Like, how does one communicate better?
Okay, so sure. So I think before we get into that, right? I think communication really differs on based on who you're talking to. So for example, if you're talking to someone in the tech department, right? If you talk technical to them, it probably will make them happier and they'll converse with you more, right? But if you talk technical to, let's say, your founders or the executive team, right? They'll just be like, yeah, what do you say? So there you need to show them the big picture that
Correct.
this is what you're planning and this is the strategy that you want to follow, right?
Right.
It really differs from person to person, but that is where the first point comes into picture, right? Where when you're working at an early stage startup, you're just talking to so many different people from so many different backgrounds that you can quickly you know how to navigate the conversation, right? For example, unlike a large organization where you can't reach the CEO, here you can essentially go and talk to the CEO and be like, okay, this is the big picture thing that we should ideally focus on. You can go to tech and understand what they're building. You can go to design and really understand what goes into the mind of a designer, right? And I think you build that muscle when you're working for 2-3 years
Right.
at a very early stage
But I feel like I think even for that to happen, right? I feel like among the three things you mentioned, which is tech, design, and data, right? You probably have to start working on a ground level, at least in one, right? At least in my case, I started with design. So automatically, let's say landing pages or any like website design, it
Yeah.
became much easier for me to understand, right? Similarly, in your case,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you knew some content and you also built a base in tech, right? I think you learned SQL over the
Yeah.
years and you knew data, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously that was a
Yeah.
helpful point. So another bonus tip again would be that probably try making a base in one area, at least out of the 3 points that Rakshit mentioned, after which you could probably go on
Yeah.
to practicing and building that muscle among the actual experts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the whole point of getting into product management or into any role is the fact that you need to learn very quickly, because whether we like it or not, as non-tech people, we are at a disadvantage, right? So the your ability to learn should be much faster than your peers, and that's how you'll succeed here, right? Now, with that said, let's go into the most important and intriguing topic, which majority of the people would want to know. Does package matter? Dhruv, I mean, we have struggled and we have basically built a CTC from scratch, right? From 4 lakh rupees to now whatever.
I remember this one time where a friend of mine told me that they were earning 10,000 rupees extra a year, and I was so jealous. I think I just slept off that night. This was first year out of
Yeah.
college, but yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I think when I was earning 30,000 rupees a month, I was like, "Ki if I can just double this, I would be the happiest person," and it's just so much money. But yeah, yeah. So the point here is that that actually helped us essentially take risks very early in our careers, right? Because if you think about it, if we were at, let's say, 15-20 lakhs of package right from day one, it would have been extremely difficult for us to completely switch our journey or switch our careers from X to Y, right? So point number 4 is that package matters, and it really matters, but probably not initially, right? And this is where, I have a very contrarian opinion. So I have this very interesting story, right, where a friend of mine wanted to get into product, and she tried multiple things. She tried switching her company, tried internal switches, etc., but nothing seemed to be working with her. That is when I gave her an advice that why don't you switch your company, and you should be willing to take a pay cut just to get into this field.
Okay. And did she do it?
Yeah.
Oh.
She not only took like a 30-40% pay cut,
Hmm.
she went to like a very early stage startup
Hmm.
to essentially work in the product team over there. And now the package that she has is almost 2x of what she used to earn before.
Damn. So that's pretty cool. Nice.
Here's her side of the story.
Hi everyone, my name is Komal Singh Hania and I'm currently working as a product manager at one of the fintech companies in India. Here's how I got into product management, and it's been a very long journey. I always knew that I wanted to work in a startup and get the experience right from the very ground level. At the end, I landed up with this fintech company for my first job role. I kind of became a generalist in a way because I was handling multiple things, which is why I decided for an internal shift within my company. However, things did not go as planned. The kind of growth, the kind of experience that I had wanted, I couldn't get that. So I was talking to my friend Rakshit, and we decided and we chatted and we thought that this is going to be a tough journey, but the motive is to get into any role in the product ecosystem as soon as possible and learn things and observe and grow it from there. Joined this relatively new startup. I started with the most junior role, which was an APM role, which is the associate product manager, and within 10 to 11 months I have gotten I have made 2x of what I was making before.
So if you think about it, all of this framework is sort of tied to each other, right? So in order for you to essentially get into a product role, the first thing is that you need to work at a smaller startup. You need to get good at multiple skills. You need to get good at communication. So it's all sort of interlinked into one part, right? But there is one part that is slightly different, and it requires a little bit of luck. But with a few things that both Dhruv and I have sort of done and mastered over these 3-4 years, I think it can help people. And that is, how the hell do you get an interview or a reply from a company, right? And both Dhruv and I have sort of done some weird stuff that has seemed to work, right? So I'll just give you guys an example. When I was applying for a product role for the first time, I basically sent an email to this dream company of mine, right? Where I was like, if I get into this company, it'll be great, right? But the point is, the subject line was APM application. So nobody was reading that, right? Nobody was clicking on that email, going through the entire thing, even though the body was nice, right? So the way I got attention was, you've got your PM, or you've got your product manager.
I think
and that got attention.
Yeah, I think even I would have probably, as a manager at my own company, I would have 100% opened that mail, right? Just because you exuded that kind of confidence, right?
And the interesting thing is that I did not beat around the bush. I just talked about, like, look, I love your product, right? And I think I can be a great value add. And these are the 5 things that I've done. Here's my resume.
Right.
I was very straightforward, to the point. Nobody has time to read your long email, right? So just get to the point that you love the product, and these were the 5 things that you have done, or 3-4 things that you have done, and finally attach your resume.
And I think you missed the resume point, because I remember you had once shown me the resume you sent this company to crack that role, and you put bows and arrows in it, and I found that extremely intriguing, because I don't think every company is okay with that. But definitely for smaller stage like companies or medium-sized companies, people are looking for differentiators. Even if I have to take my own case, right, and I'll probably put up a screen grab at this point in time, although it was like a horrific mail. I had no subject line. It was just an internship application in my case, right? The only thing I did differently, I read this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie long back. And I think one lesson I learned from that is always portray how you can help the other person if you want to get something back, right? So instead of saying that, oh, I want an internship because I have a summer internship requirement, bro, nobody cares about it, that, right? The thing is, how can you be of benefit to my company, right? So even if you read my mail, I'd be saying stuff like how I can help you with performance, and my only and in fact I even wrote that I'd be willing to work for free. And even though I would not recommend doing that for anybody at this point in time, because it's a little desperate, it does work to some extent, right? So point being, I think in culmination, differentiate yourself, use interesting subject lines, show some confidence, show clarity of thought about why should someone hire you, and obviously portray yourself as someone who can help the company rather than how the company can help you, right? And I think that's a wrap on this episode of Perspectify. If you like this video, obviously do consider dropping a like, and make sure you check out these 2 videos that we're going to pop up on the screen at this point in time about how you can become or what does a product manager do in 2024, and also how to master data and Excel for product and marketers, right? And I think that's all from us. So that's me, Dhruv, and
Rakshit signing off from this episode. Goodbye.
Take care.